Oh, clip is my
Okay. Okay, homeostasis. What you guys know what homeostasis is? You've learned about it. No, you've learned about it. Anatomy. What do you guys know about it? Homeostasis.
I remember it, but I don't really remember.
I remember hearing the word.
Like I remember hearing the word too, but I don't.
Okay, anytime you see that homeo at the beginning of a word, it means same. It means same, okay? So stasis is a word part or a suffix or actually a root word, it ends up being, that means standing still. So it's like the literal meaning is it stays standing, it's like same standing still, which kind of sounds weird. But what that means is homeostasis just means that your body is in balance. It's in its normal working condition. And what's crazy, we've been talking about it in anatomy, but there are so many things that goes on in your body that makes you be able to function. Your blood pH level, y'all remember what pH is, right?
Has to be at 7.35 to 7.45.
Yes, 7.35 to 7.45, or your body just goes haywire. It has to stay within that little bitty range pH that your blood does. Okay, your body temperature. Okay, it's not like when you get really cold, your actual core body temperature gets really cold, unless it's like you're going into like hypothermia and stuff. But anyways, it's not like if it's 0 degrees outside, your body temperature goes to 0 degrees, right? I mean, it doesn't do that. Your body stays at a same temperature because it needs to be that temperature to work correctly. So that's part of homeostasis. All those things. An interruption in homeostasis is like a disease or some kind of problem that you have. So homeostasis, we know that it's occurring when our body's needs are being met. Okay, so what are some needs that we have?
Water.
Water.
Oxygen.
Oxygen.
Blood.
Nitrogen.
What'd you say?
Blood.
Well, we do need blood. Hopefully we're not eating blood, but yes. Our blood needs to work, right? There are places that they do that.
What?
Eat blood.
Honestly.
Can you eat blood or you drink
Drink blood, I guess.
You can eat it.
That's nasty.
On, what's it called? Bizarre Foods. It's called, like, blood cake.
Okay, that's really gross.
It's just, yeah.
Alright,
It's good.
New conversation.
What?
I'm just kidding.
It's not human blood.
Have y'all ever watched,
It's just a go.
oh my gosh, what movie? I've always got movies I
The
know.
hills have eyes.
Heal,
Get the heart.
Not a scary movie.
Hostile.
No. What is that movie? They kill, it's like I know this is a Maasai. Y'all heard of the Maasai? They live in, like Kenya and Tanzania.
the tribe.
They wear red kind of plaid, and they're nomadic.
Oh, do they drink the blood but keep the goat alive?
Yeah, they
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly how it works. But anyways, so interesting. Okay, anyways, so tangent here, such tangent. What else do we need? We need nutrients, right? We have to have a certain amount of nutrients, and that's something you guys may not realize. So, people who you anorexic, for example, or anorexia. Okay, one of the things that happens is somebody who is anorexic and they're not getting the food that they need, the calories that they need. Well, calories provide energy for your body because you get your calories from carbohydrates. So if any of you guys ever been on like an Atkins diet where you don't get any carbs, you just eat like protein, and it wears you down because you need that energy. You get that from carbohydrates. What foods do you find carbohydrates in?
Bread.
Spaghetti.
Bread, pasta, anything that's got sugar, those are your carbs, anything sweet, any kind of bread. And you have to have a certain amount of those just to have the energy that your body, every cell needs to work. But at any given time, you've got all that going on. You have to have a certain amount of magnesium in your diet and a certain amount of iron in your diet so your blood can carry oxygen. You have to have, everything you take in, everything your body does, there has to be something else that's working, that's telling it what to do. It's crazy to think about. But anyway, When you're in homeostasis, you know that your body is functioning normally, and then every organ system in your body has a role. If there's an organ system in your body that's not working, then your whole body is going to not work. Okay, so for example, kidneys quit working. Now you can go, what's the treatment that they use for that? If your kidneys aren't working? Starts with a D? Dialysis. Okay, now you can go on dialysis, but the point is that your body still has to filter the blood somehow. It still has to be filtered, so that a dialysis machine is doing it. That the function that your kidney does can't stop. You may not have your kidneys, you may be able to go on dialysis for a while, but the blood still has to be filtered. That function still has to take place. Does that make sense? So, and your body requires that. So just a snippet about homeostasis. You probably learned, like I said, a lot of that before. If not, and you take anatomy, you'll learn a lot of it then. But anyways. Okay. The abdomen. So abdominal quadrants. When you think of quadrants, how many do you think there probably are?
4.
4 of them, right? Quad 4. Okay, and these are pretty easy to figure out. Remember that anytime we're talking about directional terms or anything like that, it's always the patient's right or left. It's always there. So when you look at abdominal quadrants, okay, actually, okay, so when we look at these abdominal quadrants, they are exactly like what they sound, right? Upper quadrant, you just, basically you make a cross at the belly button. That's where that cross meets. And then the upper right one is upper right quadrant, upper left quadrant, lower right, lower left. Pretty simple, okay? Nothing crazy. Just always remember, a lot of people get mixed up because, you know, your right is the patient's right, not yours looking at it. It's theirs. It's always theirs, okay? Don't forget that. Now, why do you think that we have these? Why do you think they have abdominal quadrants? Okay, so let's say you go to the emergency room because you've been having some stomach problems and you say, oh, my stomach's been hurting. They're going to say, where does it hurt? Okay, if you point up here, they're going to think a lot different problems than if you point over here. So that's why they might write, you know, they'll write in your notes. Complains of pain to the right upper quadrant. Make sense? Right lower quadrant, probably going to think appendicitis. Does that make sense? So that's why we need landmarks and an idea of where, you know, how to do directions.
Why does the lower right always hurt when you run a lot?
I don't know, but
Yeah, it always does.
I don't know what it is. Research that and get back to me. Okay, then we get to the 9 abdominal regions, and these get a little bit more difficult to remember. So if they're not big enough on your PowerPoint, you might want to write these in. Okay, want to write them in if they're not big enough on your PowerPoint. So look, like I said, you might, can you read them on yours? Okay. Okay, so there's 9 abdominal regions, and these are just a little bit more specific than the quadrants. Typically, people will use the regions more often than, they'll use the quadrants more often than they use the regions. And I think that's just because pain is kind of subjective. You know, you're not going to say, you're probably not going to pinpoint one specific area where it hurts if you're talking about your belly. You know, it's usually like, oh, it hurts over here, it hurts over here. You know, unless you've got like a knife stab or something, then you're obviously going to know where it is. Okay, but so pain and anything that's kind of generalized, you're probably going to hear them speak about more about the quadrants. But as far as like making an incision or an area where you might be doing wound care or something like that, that might be a reason to get more specific and use the regions. Does that make sense? Okay, so these are a little bit more difficult. You will need to study them, okay? The right, we'll just stop, actually, let's just start in the very middle. So very middle region is umbilical region, which we know umbilical means what?
Belly button.
Belly button, right? That's why I made that one of y'all's words last week. So the umbilical region is just always right in the center of the belly, right where the belly button should be. That's the umbilical region. If you go directly above that is the epigastric. Any ideas on what gastro means? Or gastric? Have you heard that term before?
Gastric bypass.
Gastric bypass. What else? What do you think gastric means? It's stomach. Gastric means stomach. So anytime, that'll be one of your root words you learn next week. Gastro is a root word for stomach. And I always remember that because you get gas in your stomach or whatever. Right? Pretty simple one usually to remember. So a gastric bypass, what they actually do is you don't bypass the stomach, but they do take out a section of the stomach and actually make it smaller. So it doesn't quite bypass the stomach completely, but it does pass part of it. So epi means above, like your epidermis. Epi means above. So epigastric, the literal meaning for that is above the stomach. I just always remember epi is above, so it goes above the umbilical region, because it's actually, the stomach is like right here. It's kind of in that region. So that's epigastric. And if you go directly below the umbilical region is the hypogastric. Any ideas on what hypo might mean? Below. Po rhymes with low. Okay? Po and low, they rhyme. So hypogastric goes below the umbilicus region, or the umbilical region, sorry. Okay, those are the easiest ones probably. Okay, then you move on. Let's go to these upper two regions. Okay, remember the right is always the patient's right, the left is always the patient's left. So right hypochondriac. Chondro actually means cartilage. So the literal meaning for this is like, means below the cartilage, which is kind of weird. But when you think about this part of your ribs, you guys know that kind of, you kind of see a line, and I'll show you on the skeleton in a minute, is actually cartilage. So if you can remember that your ribs have all that cartilage on them, where they attach to the sternum, you think, cartilage, chondro means cartilage. So hypochondriac means below cartilage is the literal meaning. That's these two upper regions. These are both the hypochondriac regions, right and left. Okay? Hypochondriac. Everybody say it.
Hypochondriac.
Okay, where have you heard that term before?
I thought it was like spazzed out.
Yeah. You hear that term used frequently for somebody who, thinks they're sick all the time.
That's what my dad says. He's like, why is it called that?
I don't know why either. I don't know. Umbilical region, on either side of the umbilical region are the lumbar regions. Where have you heard lumbar before? What other body part is it related to? Anybody ever heard of lumbar support?
Yeah.
Heard that term before? Okay, your lumbar is actually a region in your spine. And it's that part that arches, that's your lumbar spine. And so if you'll remember that that's lumbar, which we're going to learn the spinal regions in a minute, remember that it coincides with the arch. That coincides. If you think about where your arch is and it wraps around, that makes the lumbar regions on either side of the umbilical region. Right and left lumbar. And then the last one, there's actually two names. I want you to write down another name for this. This lower regions, this is like kind of like the groin area, the right and left iliac. The other name for this is inguinal. I-N-G-U-I-N-A-L. Inguinal. I-N-G-U-I-N-A-L. So you'll hear those used interchangeably. Iliac region or inguinal. Inguinal means groin. Iliac is one of the hip bones that's in your pelvis. So that's why either one of those terms can be called that. Okay, so those are the 9 regions of the abdomen. There's really just 6 that you have to know because they're right and left of the ones on the outside. Okay, we already talked about planes. Okay, let's talk about spinal regions, and you may have to write these in too, because they're another kind of small on your paper. Okay, so when you're looking at the spine, you can grab our skeleton over here. Have to expose them here. I know, so wrong. Actually, just take this off. Okay.
Yeah, are those real bones?
No, this one's not. Okay, so when you're looking at the spine, I'll just hold it up like that. When you're looking at the spine, there are 5 regions, basically, that we will look at. The first one is called cervical region. What does cervical mean? Neck, right? So we already know that one. You should already have an idea of where that is, because we know cervical. And that cervical are the first 7 vertebrae. So it starts up here, and your 7th one, you can typically feel that bone that kind of sticks out. Okay, that's the process that comes off of that last one. Now, once you get past that, you have the thoracic spine. Thoracic, what does that mean? Thoracic, Thoracic. Thoracic. What does thoracic mean? Where have y'all heard that term before?
Thorax, like the.
Yes, your thorax is basically like your chest, kind of like the trunk area. Okay, so your thorax lines up with your chest. Your thoracic spine is actually what your ribs are attached to. So you have 12 of those.
What else lines up the chest and what?
Okay, so you've got 7,
Lines up the chest and what?
your ribs, it's attached to your ribs. So then you've got 12. There we go. Attached. Each one has a rib attached to it, or 2 ribs actually, technically. Okay, so that's your thoracic spine. The next one is your lumbar spine. And like I said, that's right where your back arches. That's your lumbar spine. And that's 5 of them. The last 5 kind of vertebrae that you see. Lumbar, Lumbar. Okay, and then you have this larger bone at the bottom of your spine. That's called the sacrum, Sacrun. And these are actually fused vertebrae. They were separated in utero, but then they're fused, of course. And then the last bone is your tailbone, and that's called the coccyx. I can't talk today. Coccyx. Coccyx.
How do you pronounce it?
Coccyx. Okay, so those are the spinal regions. A couple things to know is how these are labeled. Okay, so let's say you get an injury to one of your cervical vertebrae. They are numbered. They'll have like a C in front of them, and then it'll say, let's say you injured that last one. It's called C7. And then it starts up with your T. So you have T, let's see, T 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So this is T12. Does that make sense? How they're numbered? T, and then the last ones, these are L. L1, L2, L3, L4, L5.
So you have a slip disc in your neck. Isn't that the same thing?
A slip disc, they all, if you look look in here, you can see where these discs are, and you can come up here and look in a minute. But there is some little cartilage in between, and that's what it's talking about when you have a slip disc, is that it's moved out somewhere.
My mom has 5 slip discs.
Oh, thank you. Anyway, so. Anyway, so that's how the spine works. Does that make sense? Any questions? Okay. That is, oh, you know what we haven't talked about is cavities. Maybe I changed my mind. Okay, let's grab a blue textbook real quick, and we'll look at them in there. I want us to go ahead and go over them because I know you're going to want me to. I thought I put them on there, but apparently not. Okay, grab one of those and go to page 175. 175. Now I'll go back and add this on. 175. Okay. These are, on the right-hand side of that page, you can see, okay, the body cavities. So let's look at those real quick. Just a few that I want you guys to know. Okay, we know dorsal means what? Back. Okay, so dorsal is that back cavity, the very last one. Dorsal cavity, okay, has 2 cavities within it. It has the cranial cavity at the top. Cranial, anybody know what your cranium is?
Head.
It's your skull. Okay, cranium is your skull. So your cranial cavity, what does your cranial cavity have in it? Your brain. Okay, and then it also has the spinal cavity. And a cavity, when I'm talking about cavities, I'm not talking about like a cavity in your tooth. A cavity is just a space. It's just an opening, which is basically what a cavity in your tooth is. It's an opening inside of your tooth where it has gotten worn down. So that is does that make sense? Cavity is just a space, open area for something to be. So within your cranial cavity is your brain. And the important thing about these cavities is they keep one particular area kind of together. So that's your cranial cavity. What does the spinal cavity have in anything? Spinal cord, okay? And it's got fluid, you have cerebrospinal fluid that floats all around. So spinal cavity and cranial cavity make up the dorsal cavity. Okay, when you look on the front side of the body, you have the ventral cavity. What does ventral mean?
Front.
Front. Okay. What's the other word for ventral? You learned it yesterday. Starts with an A.
Anterior.
Anterior. So anterior ventral. This is called the ventral cavity. Okay, so within the ventral cavity, you've got 3 other main cavities. You have the thoracic cavity. We said thoracic means what? Chest. Okay, so what do you think the thoracic cavity has in it?
Heart.
Heart, lungs. Good. Okay, then you have the diaphragm. It's just pointed out on here because it separates. What is your diaphragm?
Isn't that a little thing, right? Right. No, that's your. What is
What, like
right here
breathes
on the very end of your.
It's a muscle. It's right underneath your lungs. It's actually the muscle that makes you breathe.
Oh yeah, that's
air. Okay, it's kind of shaped like a dome. Anyway, so that your diaphragm separates your chest from your abdomen, basically. Then you have your abdominal cavity. Okay, your abdominal cavity is where your abdomen is, and then you have your pelvic cavity. which is the lower portion of the front of the ventral cavity. Holds reproductive organs, bladder, so forth. Now, one other, I want you to, and you might write these down or write this down, this page number, because you will need to know these. I'll get you guys a worksheet so you can write them down on there too. One other one, I want you to put a line around your abdominal and pelvic cavity, which you can't do that in your book, but write this one down. Abdominopelvic. You'll hear that term as well. Abdominopelvic. And all it is it's both the abdominal cavity and the pelvic cavity. That's it, those two combined. Because they don't really have a good separation between the abdominal and the pelvic cavity. They're just kind of in specific areas. But the abdominopelvic is both together. Okay, so those are the ones I want you guys to know. I'll give you a worksheet. I'll get it printed out. I thought I stuck cavities on the back of this, but I guess I didn't. So anyways, I'll, make sure those are the ones you need to know. Dorsal, cranial, spinal, thoracic, abdominal, pelvic, and ventral. Okay, any questions about those? Everybody understand cavities? That's just a space, open area. Okay. All right, we'll be done there. I'm going to give you guys a worksheet. And then once you get done with the worksheet, you can make flashcards.